All right, our next step in terms of these nice little parabolas and all their translations. I've got a nice little graph here again. Here's our basic parabola. Let's review what our basic parabola looks like. And once again, it's one of those beautiful little parabolas. Yes, right there at the origin, opening upwards. It's our happy parabola. Everything's fine. But now look what happens. I'm going to put next to the x in the square bracket a -2. I'm really curious as to what's that going to look like on my calculator. So let's get our calculator booted up here. And I'm going to put our bracket in here, our x and -2 and bracket, and I'm going to take this and square it. You won't believe what this will look like. Watch this. Even though that is a negative value, this thing hits right at the 2. You could see it right there at the 2, right? So even though this is negative, this may be a negative value, it actually comes off to the right, 1, 2. It's the same parabola, opening upwards as we had before. It's same thickness, right? And everything else, it's now just translated to the right 2 units. That's why we call it a horizontal translation. So take a look at this now. Let's go over here. I've got the same parabola as before. There's a nice little basic little parabola that we like to use all the time. Vertex is at 0, 0. Can you figure out what's going to happen when this is +5? Well, let's go to our calculator. Our calculator will graph it for us. Let's just clear this. And we have in brackets x +5 now, bracket all squared, and watch what happens. Yup, it moved it left. So it's kind of a role reversal thing here. When this thing is positive, you go left. When it's negative, you go right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There it is. Normal looking parabola just as we had before. These two parabolas again are exactly the same. Why? Because remember up front here it's supposed to have an a value, and that a value determines all kinds of things. It determines if it's opening up or down, wide or narrow. Now remember, this value up front is still a 1. So yep, it's going to be exactly the same parabola, just move it over 5 places. So let's go to our next little step here. This is our general formula for it. There's our a value that we talked about earlier. There's what we call a p-value. And notice that that is negative. That means to flip it. So let's look at our example. Here's a beautiful little example. There's 1/2. That 1/2 tells you that it's opening up and it's going to be wide. But now look at this, +4. Remember, inside the bracket, we flip it. So this is actually means it's going to be a horizontal translation of -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is, opening up but wide. So exaggerate it a little bit. Do the sketch. It looks very, very much like that. Let's go on to our next one, which is here. I've got the exact same idea again with that lovely little p-value, as we like to call it. There's 3, and it's -3, so remember to flip it. So 1, 2, 3, there's where it's going to start. This guy tells you it's going to be upside down, so it's going to be flipped. It's going to be unhappy, so opening down. And the 5 tells you it's going to be very narrow, very thin. So opening down at the 3. So there's your 3 opening down, and it's going to be very narrow. That's what it looks like.